All right, gang. So, yep, continuing onward with the anatomy of the heart here. Let's just go through. So, in class, remember we retrieved a heart model from the front bench, and you guys were supposed to identify these structures on the models here. Okay, so pretty straightforward. We're asking. Let's look at a picture though, and let's see if we can identify these structures here. Okay. And the first thing I want to do though is specify a couple of things. Okay, because there's a lot of structures here in the heart. Okay. So how do we know what's what? First things first, I want to do this. If it is red, if you see any red vessels in here, okay, the red vessels, what the red is signifying, let's change the color here as well. What the red is signifying is that that is oxygenated blood, okay? Meaning that this blood that is being shipped out through these vessels, okay, has already been to the lungs and been oxygenated by the lungs, okay? So the blood is enriched with oxygen. Versus if we see something that is blue, let's see. If we see something that is blue, so one of the blue vessels, that means that it is deoxygenated blood. Meaning that there's no oxygen. So for example, the vena cava here brings blood in from the rest of the body, okay? So it's already been used by other organs or other muscles. Doesn't have any oxygen in it. So it brings deoxygenated blood back to the heart, okay? So two specifications there, okay? The other specification I want to talk about, okay, is in regard to the pulmonary vessels here, okay? Because this is where it also gets a little confusing to some students. So a lot of people think, hey, it's blue. It's blue here, so it's deoxygenated. But why is it called an artery here? Because I see all these arteries, for example, here, they're red. So shouldn't this be red? Well, no, it shouldn't be. And this is the reason why, okay? So if you see an artery, okay, oh, look at this guy in black. If it has artery in the name, okay, overall what this means is that the blood is going away from the heart, okay? So artery away, AA. Remember those two letters, artery away. If you see an artery, that means the blood is being shipped away from the heart, okay? So for example, left pulmonary artery, shipping the blood away from the heart and it goes to the lungs. Okay, away from the heart and to the lungs here. Versus, for example, we have the veins here. All right, so we have the pulmonary veins, for example, right here and here. They're red. Isn't that oxygenated blood, Tyler? Well, no, because remember our rule up here. If it's an artery, it's going away. A vein is always bringing it back. All right. Vein always brings blood back to the heart. Okay, so remember that. We have these couple rules here. If it's red, it means it's oxygenated blood. Blue, it's deoxygenated, no oxygen. Artery, it means it's going away from the heart. Vein, bringing stuff back. All right, so big four rules there. Now we have those down. Let's zoom out here quick. So let's chat about structures of the heart. Okay, right and left atria. Right and left atria. What are these guys? The atria are the chambers of the heart that are receiving blood, okay? They always take blood in. So, for example, the right atria, which is right here, all right? The right atrium is taking blood in from the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava, all right? So it takes the blood in. This blood is coming back from other parts of the body through these vena cava, and it enters the right atrium. I always remember that it is the right atrium. One, we have to think anatomically, okay? So anatomically, in the anatomical position, remember, right is always on this side, okay? Because the person's head would be right here. And then his body would be down here, obviously, and his legs would be down here, okay? So big heart. This is the right side. This is left side, okay? So right atrium. Atrium, I always remember, as A is always above, okay? Because the atrium are always above the ventricles. The ventricles are always on the bottom. Atrium are always above. So the right atrium is over here. It takes blood in from the vena cava, superior and inferior, okay? The left atria is on the other side here, okay? As it's indicated right here. This receives the blood, or takes blood in from the pulmonary veins, okay? Because remember, veins are bringing blood back. Pulmonary veins are bringing blood back from the lungs, so it's been oxygenated, okay? Oxygenated blood. Remember, we have the red here, blue here, deoxygenated, all right? So that's those guys. And I just touched on it very briefly, but the ventricles, remember, are always on the bottom. And anatomically, the right ventricles are down here, left ventricle is down here. Okay, right, left, very straightforward. Interventricular septum. Interventricular. Inter meaning between, ventricular meaning ventricle. So the septum, so the dividing point between the ventricles. That's this guy right here. Okay, let's draw a little line down here. This is the line that divides the right from the left ventricle. Very straightforward. Interventricular septum. Okay. Tricuspid right AV valve. Tricuspid valve right here. Okay. Within the right side, it is tricuspid, meaning that there are 3 flaps, okay, of the heart. So we have 3 flaps. It's a little harder to see here, okay, because it's a model, but it is 3 flaps, which is why it's called the tricuspid valve. So it's 3-flapped valve. This valve prevents blood from being shunted back upwards into the atrium, because we don't want that. We don't want blood to be flowing backwards. We want blood to always be moving forwards, okay, up into the pulmonary trunk from the right ventricle here, okay. The bicuspid, or the mitral valve, okay, sits on the left side, okay. Same thing here. It's same purpose, wants to prevent blood from being shunted backwards, okay, so that's the purpose of the valve is kind of like a flap. It covers blood from being shunted backwards. Only difference is this one has 2 flaps, which is why it's called a bicuspid valve, okay. So we have tricuspid, bicuspid here. That's the only difference these two guys have, okay. Then we have the pulmonary and aortic valves here. So a pulmonary valve is the valve that sits in between the pulmonary trunk and the right ventricle here, okay? And same thing like all the other valves, it wants to prevent blood from being shunted backwards. So as blood is shipped off to the lungs, this valve is going to close itself off so that way any blood that's left in here that didn't get sent into the lungs won't flow backwards, okay? Same thing here with this guy, aortic valve. Any blood that is shunted off into the atria that is not fully sent off to the rest of the body cannot be processed backwards into this left ventricle because this aortic valve is going to close and prevent that from happening. All right. Tendinous cords. So these guys here, they're basically like the little tendons. I learned them in school as called the chordae tendineae. You can call them tendinous cords or chordae tendineae. It's fine by me. But these guys, what they do is they are attached to these valves. What they do is when they are pulled on by the papillary muscles, these guys here, that's what closes the valves. So the valves don't close on their own. The valves close because these chordae tendineae, or the tendinous cords, are connected to these papillary muscles. They pull and they close the valves, okay? So these are muscles here. So they contract and they pull on these valves to prevent them from allowing blood to flow backwards, all right? So, like I said, we have the superior vena cava, inferior vena cava. Superior vena cava is at the top because it's superior, all right? Inferior vena cava is at the bottom because it's inferior, okay? Very straightforward there, superior, inferior, and this is bringing blood back from the rest of the body into the right atrium, all right? Very straightforward. All right, and now we have pulmonary trunk here. I don't know why my thing is zooming in for me automatically. Oh, anyways, pulmonary trunk. All right, so pulmonary trunk right here. Okay, so this is just a colloquial term to say this is just a big vessel here before it splits off into what we know as the right pulmonary artery and the left pulmonary artery. So it's a trunk, so it's the bigger of the pulmonary vessels, and it'll eventually split into this right pulmonary artery and the left pulmonary artery. Okay. And that is where blood that is deoxygenated gets shipped off to the lungs, because pulmonary means lungs, for it to be reoxygenated, okay? So blood gets shipped off to the lungs. It has to come back. It's going to come back through these guys, the pulmonary veins here. Remember, we have 2 sets of lungs. We have a left and a right lung, okay? So the right pulmonary vein takes the blood that's been reoxygenated from the right pulmonary from the right lung, so it's called the right pulmonary vein. And then we have the left pulmonary veins here, okay? Takes the blood in from the left lung, all right? That goes in, as we know, into the left atrium here. Goes into the left ventricle, and that's going to get shipped up into what we know as this big guy, the aorta, okay? Aorta is a super, super, super thick blood vessel. Okay, super thick vessel. Has to be thick because the pressure, as we'll talk about pressures, okay, in a couple units with cardiophysiology, the pressure is so high when the heart contracts and ships blood to the rest of the body that this aorta has to be super thick to be able to undergo all that pressure so that way it doesn't rupture. Okay, aorta is the structure that will carry oxygenated blood to the rest of the body, but it's the big structure that will eventually, of course, as we know, be split up into three different pieces. So we have the brachiocephalic artery here, we have the left common carotid artery, and then we have the left subclavian artery. Okay. So Tyler, why do we have a left common carotid artery and a left subclavian artery? Good question. Reason being is because anatomically the heart sits a little bit on the left side of our body. Okay. So we have this extra vessel here, this brachiocephalic artery, that will carry the blood to the right side of the body. So the brachio means that it'll carry it to the arm, so the arm of the right side of the body, and the cephalic will carry it up to the head. Okay? So when it's on the left side, it doesn't need to have this big vessel to carry extra blood, okay? Because it doesn't have to travel as far on the left side of the body anatomically, which makes sense. So you can automatically just have two distinguishable vessels that carry blood on the left side of the body up to the head, the carotid artery on the left side, and the left subclavian artery. This is an artery that runs just inferior, just underneath our clavicle, our collarbone, okay? And this will carry blood to our left upper extremity, okay? So, three important vessels here. Make sure we know these guys, okay? And now we have these coronary arteries and the coronary sinus, okay? Can't see these guys here on this view. We're actually going to have to flip it posterior, okay? Coronary arteries are very important because they supply blood to the muscles of the heart, the myocardium, okay? They supply blood to the myocardium of the heart. When someone gets a heart attack, what happens is they get a blood clot, and that clot gets inside of these coronary arteries here. And when that happens, when blood isn't able to, remember, so blood goes away from the heart with the arteries, and it's going to go into these muscles. When a clot happens inside an artery, what happens is the rest of the blood that's trying to get pumped through, trying to support those muscles, right? The blood's not being able to get pushed through. And because of that, as we know, when muscles don't get blood, what happens is they shut off. So when muscles shut off, think about it, the myocardium is going to shut off. It's not going to be able to contract and pump blood, right? So because of that, we get what is known as a heart attack, okay? Which is why cholesterol checks are really important and why it's also really important to get good exercise, because the last thing you want is to get a clot in the coronary artery and get a heart attack, okay? So you have a right side, which supports the muscles of the right side of the heart, and you have a left side, which supports the muscles on the left side of the heart, okay? And you also have the coronary veins, which take the deoxygenated blood used by the myocardium back into the atrium, okay, the right atrium, to be reoxygenated again, okay? The big vein that takes up a lot of this blood is called the coronary sinus, which is seen posteriorly here, okay? That's this very, very thick guy. And this will shunt the blood back into the right atrium here, okay? And that's how it's going to get reoxygenated. All right? So, oh gosh, my tool here is still screwing me up. So, that's it here. Okay, we covered everything. Obviously, we did the models in class, okay? But if we were to do the pictures, this would be them, okay? So we did the pictures. We did all that. I think that we are pretty much good to go here. So I'm going to just do this here, images, heart models. In the next video, I'm going to do the sheep heart specimen, okay? And then we'll also do the trace the path of blood flow through the heart in the next video.